All right, hello. Welcome to another episode of Holy Unapologetic. I was going to say good morning, but we are actually in three different time zones this morning. So happy Wednesday, June 18th. My name is Marcus. I am your co-host with Ayce Kyptyn. How are you doing today, Ayce? What's new?
So good. It is. The weather here is phenomenal right now. So,
Ooh,
and I did a photo
nice.
shoot yesterday, which was super fun. So you guys will be seeing
Ooh,
some steamy pictures here coming up soon.
I
yes.
love it.
Yes.
We'll make sure to share it when you got 'em ready. That's so exciting. So we have another wonderful guest with us here today. I'm going to give a bit of an introduction to Mo Holloman, the main character coach. She helps queens with ADHD get shit done, follow through on their goals, and build relationships that honor and serve them. I also just want to quote your kind of why on your website because I love this so much. It says, "I do this because I know how life-changing it is to stop battling your brain and start embracing it. I care deeply because I've seen what happens when ADHD women realize their power, create fulfilling relationships, and finally thrive on their own terms." So welcome, Mo. Thank you so much for being here on the podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to meet you both in person officially too. Such a big fan. And I'm also excited about those steamy pics. You just put out a steamy video, Ace, literally today. And I was like, damn. It's an honor to be here. And happy Pride to everyone who's listening. If this episode goes out in June, it's awesome to get to hang out with you both today. I'm just so glad to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. There's just so much we could cover. There's so much we can relate to in the work that you do and the types of voices we try to amplify here. So it's like, where do I even begin? But how? I guess I'll start with the question of how did you come to this kind of work? How did you kind of find your sweet spot of where you want to be helping women like this?
Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone have a short story? I'm not sure.
Take your
I'll,
time.
I'll put it in a nutshell, I suppose. I have had ADHD always. And growing up in the 90s with ADHD, such a trip. I don't know how old either of you are, but in the 90s, especially, like, it was a joke. It was just a joke. ADHD was something that was very much looked over and not any support where I was. I'm from a town of 2,000 people and in southeast Kansas, and there wasn't really support for that. It was more of your traditional work harder, pay attention, sit still, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
We're talking about good girl, conditioning today for sure. At some point, but a lot of those types of things, right? You know what it's like to have a nature about you that's told is wrong,
Mhm.
and or that for whatever reason you can't translate for people. And so my whole life, I knew something, but I had no idea really like what any of this meant. And it wasn't until much later in life, of course, you go through life and you pack on all these different identities and you shapeshift and you morph and you try to be, of course, I fought a lot too, because I definitely have some, authoritative issues. Or maybe issues not the right word. I actually don't think it's a problem, but like, I really had a strong sense of personal sovereignty also growing up. But I think one thing I heard over and over again my whole life was, why do you always have to make everything so much harder? Like,
Mm.
you just make things harder. And so at some point I decided to just do it like everyone else. And it was cool for a while. I mean, I was accepted. Yes, I heard a lot of terrible things that definitely, as soon as you realize you're in spaces that, yes, they are loving and supporting you conditionally, that's hard.
Mm. Mhm.
Was married, and really it was only after I was married, divorced, and in a job that I absolutely hated, I was like, who am I anymore? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what am I doing, and why do I feel like I don't know myself? But there's a part of me that's like crawling out, and honestly, that was when I came to meet my very first coach. Her name was Anna, and she was a lifesaver for me. She helped me learn self-compassion in ways that I forgot. And that was
Mm.
really where it all began for me. And so that's not a short story, but that's the story.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. I've gotten to learn a lot about ADHD because my fiance is an ADHD goddess. So it's really interesting because our brains just sometimes feel like they work complete opposites. And so you're
Yeah.
always in a dialogue about it. So I'm so grateful that there are resources such as your own. But with that, something that she had told me is that ADHD can exhibit itself very differently in men and women, and that boys are more likely to be diagnosed with it than women. So I guess for you as a coach of women with ADHD, you're already starting at a disadvantage because there could be a lot of women that maybe don't know they have ADHD. So how can you speak a little bit to that? Or
Yeah. Well, I would just say any person who's been conditioned in womanhood, I guess, and so especially I don't know your lived experience, but also trans men, also queer people generally, like anyone who's been conditioned as female, there's so much about how we are supposed to behave that, of course we all know you kind of get checked throughout life, right? What's okay, what's not okay. And so and also there's different types of ADHD. You have hyperactive, you have inattentive,
Sure.
and then you have the combination type. I'm combination type. More frequently, though, women will hide symptoms, not even necessarily a conscious choice. It will be because they weren't stabbing their buddy with a pencil. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, she's fine and she's got good grades and whatever else. Because
Yeah.
and this is why so much realizing that our conditioning has so much to do with our masked symptoms that we may have not even been aware of because we've been so conditioned to be the gauge for the room, to ensure everyone else is feeling okay. Like for example, in school, for me, so one of the traditional systems that really doesn't work well is the way our school systems look today. Not knocking education, not knocking teachers. I'm a big supporter of making sure that every child has whatever it is that they need so that they can be successful, right? I'm being told to sit down and be still and, all these things. And so my mind is focusing on what I've been told to do rather than what's happening in front of me, right? And so a lot of women, especially, or individuals who have been conditioned in womanhood or in girlhood or as women, they will be conditioned in these very specific ways that tend to mask symptoms really hard. And so I would say mostly that's the why of it anyway. A lot of the times, a lot of the why individuals may get misdiagnosed, especially the hyperactive part. I mean, most studies were done on little boys, cis white boys. And so anyone outside of what that looks like, it was missed. And
Yeah.
I'll throw one more thing in there. It was often looked at, especially when I was growing up, as just a focus problem, as just a you need to pay attention problem. And the solution was telling you to pay attention. And you're like, I don't know what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that socialization is so crucial to it too, of just the idea like, oh, boys will be boys, but also like girls mature faster. It's like we force girls to mature faster. They're not allowed to run around and stab people with a pencil like boys do for many different ages. So there's so many things that are interrelated. We talk a lot about the people pleasing side of things from our religious upbringing. I was a pastor's kid, so I can very much relate. I always kind of felt like I was the dancing monkey that could be called on at any time to have to perform for a group of adults, regardless of whether or not I was comfortable in that situation. So I can so relate to that. But yeah, it's just the school structure is its own thing. I know for a lot of people, some of the smartest people that I know don't do well in test taking environments and that kind of a structure. And for me, like, I love that. I love that structure. So sometimes I almost feel like I kind of gaslight myself of like, well, I did really well in school, but also like that format works really well for me. And like I said, some of the smartest people I know really struggle with that. But I did really like how inclusive your phrasing was. I had written it down already from your website we'll talk about Nice Girl Detox, but you had said folks shaped by good girl conditioning. And so that's where, as a trans man, I've been seeing the world in all these different ways lately. And I don't want to lose out being able to talk about these things because so much of our lives, I mean, Ace and I have an almost collective half century of womanhood experience, just by being trans men. And so I've never cared more about women's issues and all of these things, but I also feel like now that I'm perceived in the world as a man, I should almost like take a back seat on these things. But I did really appreciate how you phrased it, because I am a person shaped by good girl conditioning, certainly. And you talk about good girl conditioning, unlearning shame. But let's to bring it around to a question, because I already warned you I was going to ramble with these questions.
You're not rambling. I love it. I'm so here with you both.
All right, so let's talk. You have a podcast called the Nice Girl Detox. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you know, it really started. I want to tell you guys some tea. So this summer, and by the way, Ace, I know a little bit about your background too. You were very much in religious environments. That was your whole, I read you were celibate for 30, how many years? 37?
Yeah, I lived a celibate lifestyle for 38 years. Yep.
Yeah, that's what it was. Damn. Yeah. So we all are from, you know, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Southeast Kansas. This is the Bible Belt. And, you know, there is very much a way that we are, especially those who are socialized as females, are expected to behave, you know. And I have always felt, as I said before, such a strong sense of personal sovereignty. And some of that's privilege, you know. And so how much, I'm not sure, maybe a really huge chunk, but I've always felt like I should get to do whatever the hell I want. You know what I mean? I don't need to listen to anybody, you know? And so this summer I wore this bathing suit, which, by the way, I'm very much, and I know this is not the case for everyone. And so everyone has their own journey with their bodies. I love to be naked all the time. Like, I just, like, if I didn't have to wear clothes, I wouldn't, you know. I'm very open with my sexuality. I love connection with other people. I think it's so much bigger than what we think it to be, you know. So on almost every level, I buck up against what has been expected. And I have really supportive parents in a lot of really beautiful ways. And so I know that I'm very lucky to have that. And that not everyone does. So my parents have always been supportive, but not always the environments that I've been in, right? And so this summer was one example. I'm almost 40. I'll turn 38 July 14th. It was my birthday last year. So we're coming up on the anniversary of one of the biggest dramas that have happened in my life. I probably shouldn't call it that, but it was a big drama. There's my ADHD part that's like, oh, this. But it was, I wore this thong bathing suit. There was basically no clothes, and I loved it. And I love to just express myself out in public, and I love to be loud, and I'm okay if, you know, my intention is never to make someone uncomfortable. I always want to be attending to people who are, you know, wanting to meet me. But I think we got to live bright, you know, and live loud and allow ourselves to be witnessed. And so I did that, and the blowback, I posted some videos of my birthday, and I'm telling you, I don't have to say this, but I wasn't drinking, or, you know, I was making this choice consciously. You know, I guess that's what I want to say is, like, I very much chose to do this. I wasn't drunk, you know. So I had this huge response online and phone calls about the way that I'm allowed to behave. I mean, it was shocking. And I realized in that moment that this is at the heart of ADHD, you know, neurodivergence in general. So much of what the people that I love, it's like what I'm allowed to be, you know. And I feel like, especially individuals socialized as women, this is so policed and controlled. It's wild. It's so wild. And I know that other individuals where I'm from feel very much the same way and feel even less freedom than I do. And it just blows me away. And so one of the things that I chose to do this summer, one, I've been coaching, which, you know, coaching with me is an investment. Nice Girl Detox is free. Come and be with us. You know, my whole mission here is really just create space where you can see what it looks like to give yourself permission to show up exactly who you are, and to buck against everything that we've been programmed. The biggest piece, though, too, is a lot of the hate I got was from people who identify as women, you know, and this is the sister wound. we got to do this together, and we got to talk about it together, and we got to remove the shame of ways that I've operated maybe in the past that were terrible. And I can forgive you for yours if you want to show up with me and we get honest, you know? And so that's what Nice Girl Detox is all about, is let's create a space where everybody can show up. And there's no gatekeeping here. I'll tell you everything. I want to hear everything. And I want to create less situations where people who have the choice to show up in ways that feel good to them, I want them to feel safe to do that and encouraged and celebrated for that. And so that's what it's about. That's what Nice Girl Detox is. And of course, the vision is really funneled into neurodivergence, because that's the way my brain thinks, but no one is left out. If anyone feels touched by any of these things, I so much want you to be there, you know? And so that's why I started Nice Girl Detox.
That is fantastic. I love that. So many things I would want to jump off of from there. But I love what you said about shining bright, allowing ourselves to be witnessed. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the religious upbringing is like, no focus on me. I'm just this poor, miserable, sinful thing. So it's said to have that joy, especially a healthy connection to our body. We talk about a lot of those things too. But it does tend to divide an audience. You either have people who are like, I now feel enabled to be more free myself, to be more honest, to be more open, to also shine brighter. And then the people are saying like, well, who says you get to do that? And we had a guest a couple shows ago who was talking about like when they see trans people, they're like, well, I wasn't allowed to be like free in these gender expression ways. So who says you don't have to play by the rules, these awful rules for everyone, which is why we're always saying that, like, you know, gender like boxes hurt everyone, patriarchy hurts everyone. So that does seem like there's a split. And then the people, again, women that could be reacting so cruelly to you just because that's how they're socialized and they're not liberated in that way is especially heartbreaking. How do you maintain kind of a healthy mindset with it as someone who is so out there? You've got all these great links and social media and things. How do you maintain any kind of sanity if you're getting flooded with messages?
You know, I don't know that I will say that consistently every day I show up with all of my sanity. Ace, recently you were just sharing about you were bombarded and you're like, you know, I also get to have my space to be with myself. I loved that. So I connected to that. You know, for me, it really is coming home to myself is really important. Isolation can also be just like this delicious place that I like to just stay, which I also have to be aware of. Like I'm supposed to go be around people and connect to, you know? But for me, you know, it really is just a journey every day. Like, what do I know to be true about myself? And also this will sound real idealistic, but I always want to ground into like love, because I feel like that's a little bit undeniable. We know what love and hate is right here. That's something that like, it may smell a little different, taste a little different to each of us, but we know what the difference is. You know, I know what it's like to be loved and accepted. And I know what it's like not to be. And I also, one of the things that's really helped me a lot is deciding that triggering other people is not my mission, but it is a byproduct of living in a way that is truthful for me. Yeah. And also as a coach, it's important for me to allow people to have their triggers. You know, I don't know what their story's going to be. I don't control that. But if I get to be someone, we know that just planted a seed. Maybe we know that maybe I got you to question your life now. Like the people who couldn't stand seeing my ass, like, which sorry for them, because it was looking real good at that point. Honestly, I was like, I shouldn't hide this from people. People should see it. But in that, you know, in that moment for me too, like number one, the fire that is in me right now that makes me want to burn the world down, I can channel that into something that serves others. That I can do. And that makes me feel really good. It gives me chills, literally. And then also like, it's important that people are triggered. I'm not trying to trigger you, but we're all going to have triggers, and I can't hold back so that you're not triggered. I think my job is to help reveal those to you. That helps.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that was great, you gave us some information before the meeting today, and you were saying the things that you want to talk about, but also things that you didn't want to talk about, which is super helpful. And one of the ones you had mentioned was the idea that, like, I'm not here for tips and tricks on ADHD. Like,
Yeah.
leave that for TikTok. Yeah, I like, and
Yeah.
I kind of ran some of that by my fiance before this just to see her thoughts on it. If she had any other questions herself, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." Their advice is always like, "Have you thought about not being ADHD?" So
Basically,
that's one you have there. And then another one that I really loved is you said you're not going to basically try to help people be more productive in a broken system. We talk a lot about that. We have such a
yes.
burnout culture, grind culture. I just said this in the last episode too, but we had a guest that talked about the idea of this Protestant productivity being so culturally ingrained. So I love that. So I guess, am I asking you to talk about the thing you didn't want to talk about, or just real quickly
No, but
why we
I
don't want
love
to
it.
force people to be more productive in a broken system? I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, it's like the word fix. I hear it all the time. I'm sure you do too, Ace. As a coach, there's people feel so much a lack of permission as adults. It's wild.
Mhm.
It really is. And so for me, number one, realizing all of these things that you feel are labels that have been placed upon you. Did you decide any of them? I mean, some probably. You maybe you did choose a lot. You didn't. A lot we have these contracts that we don't even remember signing, and the same goes for neurodivergence in terms of like, you know, here's a fun stat for you. Neurodivergent individuals hear 20,000 times more negative messages than their neurotypical peers, if neurotypical is even real. And and so, you know, that alone, there, and then add on top of that literally any other, you know, as trans men experience, trans kids, now I'm not trying to tell you your history, but 90% experience bullying in school and the negative messaging. Like it basically, it's like neurodivergence, and then add on that any other type of way you exist
Mhm.
outside what society has deemed to be normal. It just creates all, it's like this woven, tangled web of a lack of permission to be exactly who you are. And so I like to remind everybody at the end of the day, the rules about why you're wrong are in place by individuals profiting off of you existing in ways that are not natural to you for whatever reason.
Right.
It really is, at the end of the day, I really like to say with my clients, let's first talk about what you think a good life would feel like rather than
Oh.
can you help me figure out how to, like, I had a client just a couple weeks ago who came to me, you know, and she said, I just really need you to help fix my brain because I'm just terrible with my, you know, with scheduling, and I'm just having a hard. She's going through a separation from a spouse. She's coming alive to ways that she hasn't been honoring and serving who she is for maybe 20 plus years. And so the idea to be like, yeah, let's fix your scheduling. It's like, we need to get your nervous system in a place where you feel safe again. I know
Mhm.
you're about this, Ace. I mean, I've been listening to your work too. You know, creating safety in exactly who you are, identifying the parts of you that have absolutely been assigned that you were not actively choosing,
Yeah.
and then deciding what kind of life you want to exist within, not a life you have to like mold to fit into, right? So
Mhm.
do you even like these things that you're trying to, you know, like I asked my Nice Girl Detox, I'm like, who is they in your life? You know, that ambiguous they, the thing that holds us back, the thing that makes us feel like we don't have our free, full expression, the thing
Mhm.
that makes us feel like if we do this at work in a professional setting like this, that, you know, all the ways that we police and adjust and again become a barometer for every space that we're in. You know, for me, it's let's unpack the truth from the lies first, you know,
Mhm.
and then let's decide who you are. and then you're like, yeah. And then what kind of life do you want, rather than us building all these things that are ultimately not sustainable? They
Yeah.
will not last, and you will end up in the same place again. But it'll
Mhm.
work for a while until you burn out and go, why?
Yeah. It's exhausting. It's
It
exhausting.
is.
I find such deep alignment with everything that you just said. Because the moment that I decided to fuck societal norms, religious constraints, familial constraints, all the rules that were out there, and actually like critically think about my life and how I wanted to have ownership of my experience here on this earth, everything changed. And I love the work that you're doing, because this is what people need today. We're all in this space of survival. And what we really need is connection. Like that feeling to
Mm.
be loved, to belong, to love and be loved. All of that is really what we want. And so what I love is that you're bringing people back home to themselves and what their desires are, and living out of their own experience, and actually thriving in this world the way that we were created to do so. So thank you for the work that you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the work you do. I mean, when I was learning more about you, obviously, very, very same. I'm like, oh, I'm vibing with Ace so hard. Both of you, both of you. It is what changes everything, right? Because that's the thing too. A lot of times, people with ADHD, we want certainty. People with neurodivergence in general. I have ADHD, OCD, a list of other things that come along with that, but ultimately, we have this desire for certainty, and we'll stress ourselves out, trying to get the right answer, especially when you think about good girl conditioning, the idea of perfectionism, and the idea of showing up in ways that everyone for whatever reason agrees is right. And so the idea of like there being a right, what's cool about when you come home to yourself is that right is always sort of shifting,
Mhm.
based on new information, based on new discoveries. Thank God, based on you feeling safe to get curious. And when you get curious, you find something new that is a part of you that has just got unlocked, just came online because you allowed it. And so that's what's so cool about all of it is, and there is safety in that. There's also not, though. There's also not safety in that, right? There's safety in yourself. But also, you said something the other day, Marcus. It was the part where you talked about how it's really not satisfying having boundaries.
Yeah. The
And,
lack
and
of, yeah.
yeah, same with authenticity, right? It's like, yes, good, awesome, really feels like freedom a lot. Also, though, it can suck really hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because I feel like I'll loop in my mind of like, this is what I would say. I would tell, but it's like I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to resort to. It's like if I don't have anything nice to say, I'm not going to say anything. But that is, it's not the movie moment. It's just this unsatisfying ending. And I've been following these pages that say you have to not only mourn, the lack of that relationship, but what you thought that relationship could be, or what you thought that person could be. So yeah, but I could so relate to the idea of wanting that certainty and wanting a right answer. I struggle so much with perfectionism and how exhausting and how much burnout you can get because of it. But yeah, that's a tough one. One thing I saw recently that I really liked was this idea that's like the more I heal, the less ambitious I become. And
Oh, I
so,
love that.
like, and of course, people can still be ambitious, but it's this idea of like, I don't really feel like I need to be like famous anymore. Like, I don't need to be perceived or known in that way, or whatever it might be for someone. Like, you just start to like, I just want to have a life where I can do creative things every once in a while. I want to feel rested. Like, it's just, you start to want very different things the more you can just be like feeling safe at yourself. And so healing is really hard and it's exhausting, and it sometimes feels like you're taking so many steps backward in any kind of feeling of safety, because it is so much facing of uncertainty and discomfort. But it's also like, I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back a day, because I'm grateful for the growth. So it can be really hard work. So I'm glad that you help guide people through that for sure.
Yeah, it is. That's my favorite part of work. It's so funny. We spend very little time specifically discussing ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
yes, this is a thing that it impacts every part of who we are in a lot of ways. And it becomes part of our identity in a lot of ways. And it's the lens with which we see and experience the world. And it is really beautiful. Also, though, like,
Mhm.
you know, so much of what, going back to what you said, Ace, going back to connection, we are all so connected too, though, on so many of these different areas that absolutely shape the decisions that we make, who we become, how we honor ourselves, how we are in service of other people, you know, how we are, you know, literally just how we show up in every way. And, you know, one of the biggest pieces of my coaching is all around energy management. And one of the reasons is because, number one, I'm going to talk a little bit about time here. I promise this is going to come back to all making sense with what you're sharing. But energy management over time, and, you know, again, just the way that we experience the world, because so much of the way, yes, ADHD, especially with our nervous system, especially with how our emotional regulation, you know, just all the ways that we function. But anyway, I guess long story short, so much of what we talk about is more about the systems and the structures and the ways that you show up, and what you agree to, and how we can unpack away from those things. So yeah, I'm so honored to help guide people to seeing ADHD less as this, you know, pathologized disorder, you know. And again, I don't say disorder in a way where having a disorder is wrong. I just, again, the labels of like, what do you think it means to you?
Mhm.
You know, rather than everything being, again, it goes back to permission. The space that we're creating here is all about permission for you to define your own life experience, however you want to define it, permission to make whatever choice feels aligned and comfortable and safe. And especially when you think about energy management, the people, the environments, the things that you've signed yourself up for, you know, what does that mean for you, and how can we show up for you so that you can show up for what you actually care about. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a great book of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and his whole
Yeah,
thing of that is that you're gonna have those fucks one way or the other. You might as well make sure they're focused on something that actually matters. So you're not the person that's like,
yes,
you know, yelling at the checkout counter because you didn't get your 15% coupon. You know, it's like we're gonna care about stuff. So make sure it's stuff we really actually do care about.
hmm,
And that can really change, you know, just how much, you know, Ace and I's lives. I think the things that we probably cared about 5 years ago are very different from what we are dedicating those fucks to now. But yeah, and I appreciate how much you've been talking about just the intersectionality of these experiences too. Is so important to remember, whether it's, you know, a neurodivergence or gender identity, and how are our experiences related to a religious upbringing and this kind of good girl upbringing, and then how is that also, you know, we also experience a lot of privilege, and I'm grateful. I feel like I've learned so much about my own privilege lately. I have white privilege, but also I stayed in the closet a really long time, and so
yeah,
I didn't get called various slurs growing up, and I was able to kind of hide in my bisexuality because I could just be like, oh, don't worry, I still attracted to the
yeah,
right one or whatever. And
yeah,
sometimes I almost feel guilty about that, like I should have had more,
mm,
terrible treatment growing up. But it's good to still
yeah,
acknowledge how much these things are all interconnected, and I think about it a lot as it relates to shame and how women are socialized, and how do we then connect healthily to our bodies. So it can be kind of overwhelming, but it's also so important to remember how tied in everything is. But I also want to quote something else that you had in your notes about the idea of ADHD not being the enemy. You talk instead about patterns, emotional labor patterns, and kind of rewiring those types of things. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, it's not the enemy, but then how can we then focus on our patterns? You mentioned that a couple times in your notes.
yeah. I want to talk about patterns. I also want to just touch real quickly on what you said about
Sure.
your experience as an individual who was like, no, I'm just bi, you know, I'm not like, I still like guys, you know. um and I didn't. So I feel like I would love to touch on privilege, if I may.
Please, please.
You know, I grew up in a household that was a middle income home, and you know, I am a white girl with blonde hair, and you know, I would say, in many ways, traditionally, in a mold of what is check marked, you know, for we are okay with this. Do you know what I mean? I
Oh,
feel like
sure.
I've been able to pass everywhere I go. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I have had this, but also that's the weirdest thing. It is the weirdest thing to be someone who can exist in almost every room and feel like you never actually belong. You're like, no, none
Oh,
of you would like me if you knew everything about me.
interesting.
You like part of me, right? And I don't know honestly if that was true, because like you said, for years I shared none of it. I shared none of it because I felt like, also I didn't know, like I felt, I'm pansexual. I felt feelings for different people, but because I had no examples of pansexuality where I am from, none,
Hmm.
especially as a little kid. There was a one couple in our town who a lesbian couple that lived in our town, and they worked at the correctional camp that my dad was the administrator of. And so we were friendly with these people. I didn't know them really well, but it was my first experience witnessing anything beyond your traditional man and wife have they get married, have a baby energy, right?
Hmm.
And so for a lot of years, I just assumed that I was just flirty with everyone, but because I was attracted to men, that for sure I must be straight. But I didn't get it. You know what I mean? So like,
Hmm.
I really feel you, and I just got to say, like, I'm not the person who gets to say everyone's fine for their experience, but I just want you to know I really relate to that, and I have felt guilty about that too. Like,
Hmm.
I feel guilty that for a lot of reasons that I get to pass even still to this day. And
Yeah.
and I wonder sometimes, like, I don't feel like I have as much room to talk. I still have those moments from like, am I allowed to,
Right.
but
Do
I
I
do
get to?
also
Yeah.
want to create more space for literally everyone else to talk, because I talk a lot.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that there's the whole media side of things too. Like you said, you hadn't really seen much, and so I think there's a lot more representation about gay men in media. Lots of times they're being made fun of one way or another traditionally, but at least that's more representation than there are of lesbians. And even then, I think those representations have historically been very cruel, and especially as people that like lived through the 2000s and what the media was like then, very different than it
Wow.
is today. And so I think it's hard for women to come to terms with their potential queerness because of what they've seen. Like, especially more traditionally feminine women are like, well, I don't seem like that means lesbian stereotype in that movie. Even less representation than men too. And then if you tie that into the intersectionality with religion, where women are basically supposed to be asexual until you're married and then just having kids at that point. Women are very much kind of severed, at least in how we talk about it, from a lot of their potential desires there. And an example I just gave last time, I think, or maybe two episodes ago, but something I think about a lot is this idea that with the sex ed example, men talk about getting, or like the boys are told about erections, women are talking about their period. Like they're not even
Yes.
talking about, like, it's as if female desire doesn't exist. There are of course jokes that like, oh yeah, I can't find the clit, or female orgasm is made up. Like, oh, there's so many different reasons why I think it's really hard for women to be like, oh, maybe I'm attracted to women too, or maybe I'm attracted to gender nonconforming people as well. I'm not sure. Maybe I could be in a romantic relationship, or
Yeah.
maybe I'm asexual, but I'm, homoromantic or something. Like, there's so many different beautiful things, pansexuality, of course, included. But I think it might be harder in some cases where, of course, the stereotype is like, oh, men love sex. That's all they think about. So some of them like men, some of them, but for women, I think that can be kind of a hard path to be like, oh yeah, it's not just on the table as another thing you could pick from. It's like not even an option really. And then if you have limited representation or negative representation, then I think that can be a hard path. So I'm very passionate about anything that can help with visibility to help you. Like, there are other options out there, and it could be so much more nuanced and interesting and complicated and messy and beautiful. So more than just cisgender heterosexuality.
Yeah. It really is also fun when you give yourself I just love the word permission. You're going to hear me say it over and over again.
Mm.
You give yourself the permission to just explore. Like, the world is so colorful and exciting. And, yes, there's a lot to be paying attention to and concerned about and supporting and working on. But there's also so many beautiful things that we have access to if we just give ourselves the permission. And sexuality, especially, I would consider myself, I actually don't want to say that. I was about to say I'm a hypersexual person, but I honestly feel like that sounds like judgment.
Yeah.
I'm a sexual person. I love to experience people. You know what I mean? Ace, Marcus, I know you know what I mean.
I know, it's like, we got to give it to Ace after this one. He's going to have some good
Yeah, I got to
for
hear.
sure.
And I know that you asked me about patterns. I swear we'll talk about it.
We'll
But,
get
but
we'll get there.
I
That's
feel,
totally fine.
yeah,
Great.
I really feel like there's just so much we can learn about ourselves as a result of feeling open, and very specifically, not just the sexual part of relationships with people, but also the human connection part. And so, yeah, like I feel like if there's one thing that, not just one thing, but if there's something that anyone listening to this, especially if you've ever felt like, especially your orgasm wasn't prioritized, like let's unlock some things, because it's a beautiful, colorful world and Kristen, I know she was on your podcast, with lots of orgasms, if you would like to experience them with all kinds of different people, if that's what you want to do.
All right, Ace,
Yeah.
jump in here. Let us have it.
Jump in. Yeah, I was just on a panel of experts on embracing the slut life. And what you're saying is 100% that of like, let's explore those curiosities and start to follow our pleasure and redefine what some of these terms and rules are that our culture has created for us that do not do us any service at the end of the day, right? And all it does is it makes us repress our desires versus living out of a life of like genuine desire and curiosity. And so I love what you're saying, full alignment. Like, let's redefine what the world standards are and create our own.
100%. And what's really cool is the more permission I give myself to explore the world, the more I want everyone else to, which is part of what like opens this up for all of us. It's like, oh my God, you are never going to believe what, it was so amazing. Whether it was something as silly as changing a structure of the way that I do something that's been hard in my life, or sexuality, you know what I mean? It really doesn't matter. It's like, and I think that's part of why people want us to not explore, because the more you want to experience life, the more you want everyone else to have the same ability. And there are definitely powers at play that benefit from us not pulling our heads up from our chronic burnout and productivity, hustle culture, conditioning that keeps us in roles that are benefiting off of, right? And so I think that's a real big reason why, if we're resentful about life, we're pissed when anyone is really living it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. And I've been seeing this one floating around a lot too, of like, with so much pressure for women to be skinny and like, oh, you don't want to get too muscular. It's like, okay, so you want us to be exhausted and not strong, not able to defend ourselves, like all these terrible things in terms of like,
yeah.
It all comes back to power. That's all it comes down to, is everybody wants their own piece of power over you. And if you have power, that means that they don't have power.
I always say that, like, as I heal, I feel like I just run on cleaner energy. It's like I'm switching from like something nuclear to just like hydroelectricity or something, and it's just this beautiful feeling, and I want to share it with everyone. And that's why I like these platforms and getting to talk about things that we were told we should be ashamed of and hide and keep to ourselves. That's another big one too, in terms of women sharing their stories, is how much they can help each other, but they feel like they should keep everything to themselves and not complain. That doesn't mean it was easy. It's just that women are socialized to not talk about it, which is terrible. And so I think there's an enormous amount of power and catharsis in sharing our stories and talking about these things. But yeah, if we want everyone to come along, and that's, I think, a great sadness I feel for people that don't want to change or don't want to step out of their comfort zone. It's like, it's so much better over here. Like, for your sake, not mine. I'm already doing so much better here. It's for you, and how much happier and richer and more authentic and the better connections, all of those things that your life can include.
Yeah.
For people.
Well, and you think about rejection sensitivity, and a lot of neurodivergent people will experience rejection sensitivity, especially if you have OCD. Now, there are plenty of other bipolar disorder too. I mean,
Mhm.
we could go on for days. The way we experience rejection is different. And maybe everyone does. I mean, I really don't believe that there is a normal brain. I'm starting to believe that that is not a real thing. Um, but we experience rejection on this different kind of level. We loop about it. We obsess over it, and that's part of why we will find ourselves in roles and behaving in ways that don't serve us in any way.
I'll share this because my fiance said it was okay to share, but she definitely can relate to that side of things in terms of that rejection sensitivity. She really related to what you had written in your notes about this emotional labor patterns, because she kind of felt like when she was younger, she was seen as too emotional. So now she doesn't really either know how to express her emotions or feel like she shouldn't. So I guess, how do you not overcorrect was something she was curious about. So I'll just kind of tie that back around in case you want to jump in wherever you'd like to when it comes to patterns.
Yeah, I'll say you're probably going to overcorrect. You're probably going to get, just like with boundaries, you're probably going to go hard and it's going to get awkward. That's the
Mm,
thing I would love everyone to just remember, that when you're practicing new things, you're going to make mistakes, and that's really
mhm,
okay. And really, mistakes are in the eye of those who are in your environment. And if you're in environments that are really super supportive,
mm,
there's space for that. And so I would just say you might overcorrect sometimes, and that's really okay. You're gonna find it though. Like, just
mhm.
let's keep doing it together. That's also why spaces like anyone listening to your podcast is a part of a community where if you're a listener of Wholly Unapologetic, you're going to be in a space most likely where you could overcorrect and still be very lovingly accepted. Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
Same thing with Nice Girl Detox. So I would say you first have to find what feels right to you, and that may take some exploring, and I'm not sure that you ever fully land there either. I don't know that we ever fully land anywhere very specifically, but we are further into the territory of something that's more in alignment with who we are.
I love that.
So let yourself be in that. You know what I mean? Let yourself walk around, bump into things. It's new, you know. And so what I would say in this moment is just to experiment, allow yourself to experiment. Being in environments with communities who you can share these experiences with helps a lot.
Mhm.
And then here's a coaching piece. Ace, you know this too. When you're in a container with someone who's dedicated to your specific goals, your patterns, I'm starting to see you know what I mean, like you start to see these things with people. They reveal to you in so many different ways what they want. And so being able to have people in your life that mirror back to you what is the truth, you know what I mean, um and and encouraging you and loving you and supporting you, that's really big. And so I would just say, to your question of how do you not overcorrect, I would say it's less about, because again, we got to get rid of the idea that we're going to get something wrong.
Mhm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
fix
It's
the
like,
brain.
yeah, like that, because otherwise you'll just always feel like you're coming up short, which if you have neurodivergence, or if you're a person who's ever struggled with your identity or the way that you present yourself to the world, you're like, you've been doing that long enough. What if we just put that shit down of you're going to be wrong,
Mhm.
and really just focus on doing what feels more right to you today than does it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so anyway, I guess I would say being in an environment with me too, I can really, really help you with that. And we can cut the time down of the bumping around and the discomfort and the awkward and, but you're never going to get away from it. Do you know what I
Yeah. No, I think
mean?
that's super healthy, is just to know it's not going to be perfect, which I know is really hard for people in just high control religions.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be perfect. I know that's something Ace said to me right out of the gate with coaching, was just like, you're going to fuck it up. So go fuck it up. and
Yes.
but I think that was such helpful advice and terrifying advice. And so I want to throw it over to you, Ace, as well. I mean, I feel like with this kind of figuring out your patterns, walking around, bumping around things, I feel like you could probably tie this into the erotic blueprints as well, as people are kind of trying to find what works best for them without, you're not just going to know right away, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And Mo, I'm sure you relate to this. It's go only as fast as the slowest part of you wants to go. And all of this exploration and curiosity that you have. Like, tune into the sensations that are arising in your body and allow them to flow through you, and just kind of be with the small pieces and just take those bite by bite. Because a lot of people, what I see in this journey is they're like, okay, I want to fix this. I have all these things that I want to change. It's like, yeah, that's great. I love that you have goals, and I love that you have a desire to move into more alignment. And there's only so much you can do in this moment. So do what's right for you in the moments that you have choice over. And yeah, so I found that really helpful with my clients, and also for myself, of like, even as I go throughout the day, pausing, taking a breath, and then asking myself, what's right for me in this moment? And then maybe just changing my alignment and my course just a little bit, so that I'm more in alignment with what I want and desire.
I love that. Yeah. Grounding yourself in your body, trying to find safety in your body. One of my own coaches talks a lot about how just with being trans, you're kind of like, as you're shoved into these boxes, you're basically cut into pieces. And so finding ways to reconnect can be really difficult, but so important. I think with people that struggle with different kinds of anxiety or depression, it's like you're either living in the past or you're living in the future. And I definitely am the latter, in terms of like, well, this is what I need to fix, and I can fix that, and I can fix that, and I can fix that. And so now, like, my fiance has heard me say, like, how do I fix my brain so I'm not always looking at things to fix, you know? And that's still it's so thing, but I really tried to be present and not just think it, you know. Even just this morning, we were sitting on our back patio. We've got this little pool out to stay cool. It's this lovely day. And I'm looking over thinking like, okay, I should clean that thing, put that away. I should wrap up the hose. It's like my brain is only ever going on. And I think it is very much like a shame-based, I should always have everything perfect. And so I'm trying really hard to just be like, here I am. I'm sitting out in the sun with my fiance. It's a lovely day. I've got this patio, you know. So trying to be present at the moment is something I'm definitely going to be working on. One thing we do really like to do here, I love linking in as many resources as possible for our listeners. I know, Mo, you had this fabulous link tree, so I'll have that connected in case people want to coach with you, in case you want to get connected to your podcast. Anything else you'd like to share in terms of resources for folks, or things that I can link to just help people that have just really connected to what we've been talking about today?
You know, I would, first of all, if you're not following Marqus and Ayce, I would say this is a great resource right away. Really just being in community. I could link you to all kinds of resources. And what I would love to say, I'm at Main Character Coach on Instagram. Let me know what you are needing in your life right now. And I'll link you to resources, because they're not all ADHD related. And like I said, in fact, like, you know, especially you talking about the support, the somatic support, you know, the somatic experience, coming home to your nervous system, finding, you know, connection to your body. So many people with ADHD are in their heads when getting into their bodies and the wisdom of your body. That's huge in my work. Energy management is huge in my work. So I love what you said. You know, I also will tell my clients, every day you wake up, just ask yourself, what's my energy today? What's my capacity today? That's going to have so much to do with, you could have all the time in the world, but if you don't have energy and capacity, guess how much you're going to do today? And how you treat yourself is going to have a lot to do with what you get done tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? It's all about, what can I give myself right now in this moment? So beautifully walked through coming back to your body. I loved that so much. I would say that was a really great resource that everyone listening, please plug that into your brain and keep it forever, because that's a really huge tip. The only other tip that I'd love to add, I like to say for my neurodivergent clients, if you can look at everything as, how can I make this as easy as possible? We're talking, it's okay to pick the lazy route. You know what I mean? Like, make everything possible and be in service of yourself. If you do those two things, oh my gosh, your life is going to radically shift, and without even trying, you know. That's what I would say. And then reach out to me. I want to be your buddy. I want to be your friend. I am not the kind of person who won't talk to you unless you're my client or something, you know, like, get in my DMs, let me know. Let's be friends. Let's hang out. If you'd like information on Nice Girl Detox, I'll get you that too.
Fantastic. Thank you. I love that. That's such a compassionate perspective too of like, what energy do I have today? Because I think we're so trained to like, no, you can do more, more and more. And that's of course all we see
Yes.
on social media, and going past our limits just because we can or we should, all these words that we should probably try to take out of our language. So I really like that, of just being a self-compassionate way of being like, what can I do today? Not like what should I have to or should, or yeah, pushing past limits, but to really be taking care of ourselves. That's beautiful. How about over to you, Ace? Anything you want to throw in here as we start to wrap up?
I would just like to say, give yourself permission to Herkle Durkle. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. And then
I gotta write that down.
All right. As always, I'll throw the links down below. Thank you so much, Mo, for being here. I'm so excited. We might have to have you back just 30 more times to cover all the things we could cover today.
Always.
But thank you both so much for your time. And as always, we'll have a lot of the resources so anyone that's listening can learn more. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll catch up with everyone on the next episode of Wholly Unapologetic.